Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. We're having a special council public planning meeting tonight, so I appreciate everybody coming out here for this. I'll call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. I'll read the land acknowledgement. As visitors on this earth, the town of Bradford will be acknowledged that the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabeg Nation, which includes Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi Nation, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. We recognize that Huron-Wendat, Chippewa, and Haudenosaunee nations have walked on this territory over time. In times of great change, we recognize more than ever the importance of honoring Indigenous history and culture and are committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation, respect, good health with all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. Council adoption agenda. Recommendation that the special council agenda dated August 8th, 2023 be adopted as amended. And the amendment is because of the address change. The presentation. Okay, sorry. Okay, so moved by Councillor Burkite, seconded by Councillor Harper. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Declaration of beginner interest in general nature. If you have one now, you can declare it, or if it comes up when the issue comes up, if you want to declare, then that's fine. Seeing none at this time, the public information meeting applications for zoning bylaw amendments. So we'll convene the public meeting. Introduction for the purpose of the meeting. This meeting is a statutory public meeting held pursuant to section 34 and 39 of the Planning Act to discuss amendments to the zoning bylaw 2010-050. The town has received two applications that have been deemed complete under the Planning Act and is therefore required to hold this public meeting as part of the application review process. Comments presented at this public meeting are being recorded by staff. Personal information is being recorded according to the Municipal Act and the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Questions regarding the collection and use of personal information should be directed to the clerk. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to council before a decision is made on the proposal, that person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal and may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal, unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. So we're on 4.3, public information meeting application, temporary use zoning bylaw amendment, owner Mod Air Homes Limited, municipal address, no municipal address at 6 Line 10 Side Road. The planning file is D14-23-02. Planning report. Planning staff will now present the contents of the staff report. Please note that the application being presented by staff represents the applicant's development proposal. The presentation by staff will contain an update on comments received to date and does not include a recommendation on the proposal. Town staff will provide a report at a later date, which will also reflect and consider the public comments made during this public meeting and written submission received before the report is written. I now invite Thomas Dissette, our senior planner, to present the application. Thomas, it's yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and members of the public. Tonight, I will be presenting on D14-2302 for the property located at line 6 and side road 10. If we could go to the next slide, please. The subject property is located at the southeast corner of side road 10 and line 6, northeast of the newly constructed roundabout as part of the SWAR Southwest Arterial Road construction. Next slide, please. Tonight, I will be discussing the purpose of the public meeting, introduce the application, provide an overview of the subject property, summarize comments received, and provide next steps. If anyone wishes to receive further notification on this application, to send an email to myself at tdysart, that's TDYSART at townofbwg.com, or to also sign the roster at the back of the room. Next slide, please. The purpose of tonight's public meeting is to introduce the applicant's proposal to council and members of the public, invite questions, and seek input on the application. Once an application is been received by the town and deemed complete, the municipality is obligated to hold a public meeting as prescribed by the Planning Act. As a reminder, staff are introducing the applicant's proposal and have not yet completed a detailed analysis of the application. Council will not make any decisions this evening, and should anyone wish to receive further updates, to do so by contacting myself. Next slide, please. An application for a temporary use zoning bylaw amendment has been submitted by Michael Smith on behalf of the property owner, Mod Air Homes. The purpose of the application is to permit a modular trailer to be used as a business office on the subject property for a period of 3 years, the maximum allowed time under the Planning Act, as the property owner seeks the location of a new office. We could go to the next slide, please. Notice of tonight's meeting was given in accordance with regulations under the Planning Act. Signage was erected on the property in July of this year with a notice of complete application and notice of public information going to all those property owners within 120 meters. Notice was also provided on the July 6, 2023 edition of the Bradford Topic and published online in Bradford Today. In addition, notice of the revised location for tonight's meeting was sent last Thursday, as well as communicated on the town's social media channels. Next slide, please. The subject lands are located on the east side of Side Road 10, north of the realigned Line 6 at the new roundabout. The property is surrounded primarily by residential and agricultural uses, and the property is largely vacant. If we could go to the next slide, please. In the town's 2023 official plan, the lands are located outside the Bradford urban area and designated agricultural. Agricultural uses, agricultural related uses, and on-farm diversified uses are permitted on agricultural designated property. Temporary uses are permitted, subject to the use being compatible with adjacent land uses, can be accommodated within Planning Act maximum time limits, and where municipal water and sewage services are required, services are available. And lastly, the proposal would not affect traffic and can provide adequate on-site parking. We could go to the next slide, please. Zoning bylaw 2010-050 as amended zones the land as agricultural, which permits primarily agricultural uses. Next slide, please. The applicants are proposing a temporary zoning bylaw amendment whereby a modular trailer will be used as this property owner's business office, which is relocating off of West Park Avenue to allow for a residential redevelopment. Under the Planning Act, the maximum allowable time for a temporary use zoning bylaw is 3 years. If approved under the 3 years, an applicant is, if approved and would like to be extended, the applicant would be required to go through the same process to permit additional extensions. The applicant is proposing an entrance off the former Line 6, so just north of the property, and is proposing a trailer to be used for a business office. The business office itself will be approximately 155 square meters or 1,674 square feet and have 7 parking spaces. We could go to the next slide, please. These are the elevations submitted by the applicant. The office would feature a conference room, 4 offices, a small kitchen, as well as a bathroom. Next slide, please. The application and materials submitted in support of the application were circulated to internal departments and external agencies in July of this year. And to date, staff have received comments stating that they have no concerns from the Town of Bradford Fire Division, Enbridge, Hydro One, the Conservation Authority, as well as South Lake Regional Health Center. Staff are still accepting comments from members of the public, as well as our Development Engineering Division and Community Services Department. Next slide, please. As part of the circulation, to date, we have not received any comments from members of the public. Next slide, please. This concludes the presentation. As a reminder, this meeting is being held under the Planning Act and staff are introducing the applicant's proposal. Staff are continuing with a detailed review of the application and will bring a report back once a comprehensive review takes place. Next slide, please. The agent is here this evening, Mr. Michael Smith, to present on the application as well as answer any questions that the public may have. And as a reminder, if anyone wishes to receive future notification on this application, to send an email to myself at tdysart@townofbwg.com. And that concludes my presentation.
All right, thank you, Thomas. Appreciate that very much. I now invite the representative to now is invited to provide additional details of the proposal if you wish. Mr. Smith.
Good evening, everyone. Thomas has done a pretty thorough overview of the application, so I'll be just highlighting some points. I have the next slide, please. Again, that's the location. Next slide, please. A little better view. Again, this shows the proximity of the residential and surrounding agricultural uses to the site. Next slide, please. So these stockpiles, this was obviously taken earlier this year during winter condition. Those stockpiles are quite small now, but it's in that general area where the trailer would be located. Next slide, please. Again, next slide. There's the site plan itself. And again, it shows the 7 parking spots that Thomas referred to. Next slide, please. Again, this is elevation drawings, but in this case, it's sort of the real world version of what's at 391 West Park Drive. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Oh, it's the end of it. Okay. I wanted to, I guess, leave you with the reference that Thomas made to Section 39 of the Planning Act, which does permit temporary uses. And what's unique about temporary uses is it gives municipalities flexibility to make decisions that, in this case, don't necessarily conform with the zoning bylaw. So it does permit uses that are prohibited, in fact, by the bylaw. However, the bylaw must conform to the official plan, and Thomas did indicate that there would be a review of those policies. But it's our opinion that the proposed use will not impair the long-term use of the property. Again, it's a temporary use. I haven't seen engineering comments, but there was some discussion about having a gravel rather than paved parking area, for example, but that can be addressed. I understand municipal services are available if the town prefers that, or alternatively, the site, I think it's just over 2 acres, is sufficient in size that it would accommodate a septic system. It's on the former portion of the 6th line, which is a dead end, so I can't imagine there'd be any traffic impact. And again, we've provided for adequate on-street parking. And I think that's really all I wanted to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So now public participation. Members of the public are now invited to address council and provide any comments and ask questions. Please provide your name, speak directly into the microphone. If residents have prepared a written submission that they are reading from, please submit it to the clerk upon completion of your presentation. Planning staff, the applicant and their representatives are now invited to respond. Oh, sorry, we're public. I'll call for public participation. Going once. I will call for a second time public participation. Twice, and third time public participation. All right, seeing none. I will say council is now invited to ask final questions of the planning staff, the applicant and the representative. So any questions from council on this application? Councilor Dehaney.
Thank you so much for the presentation. You said that you sent out some information to the residents around that area, but you have not received anything. Are we planning on revisiting that? Because few weeks ago when I walked around Heritage Street, there were a few residents there, no big concerns, right? Because I'm sure they did get the information, but others weren't aware. So I just want to know if you'll be revisiting, sending out more information and give time for residents to actually respond, because right, everybody's so busy and caught up, right? So I just want to know about that.
Thank you for the question, Councilor Dehaney. We did issue notice of the complete application and public information meeting on July 6th, advertising of it to all within 120 meters. So depending on when we do a buffer on a street, it just depends on where we are on Heritage Street. So not all of Heritage Street might have gotten it. It's just where it is, where it falls within that buffer. So obviously if those property owners have not gotten it, they can always reach out to me to confirm where, if they were located in the buffer. But with respect to the July, just last week's notice, it was also sent to the 120 meter buffer. So it's just a matter of where they fall within the circle. But if they have not received public comments, we do drop them off at Canada Post, and Canada Post is responsible for delivering it to the community mailboxes. And then those property owners would have to access it from the community mailboxes.
So I guess we're going to be giving resident time to respond.
Absolutely.
Especially those that are away, right?
Yep.
Okay, awesome.
Yep.
Thanks.
So my email is always open for comments from members of the public. They can email me and they'll be definitely included with any recommendation report.
Yeah, comments can be received right up to the date that the council reviews the application again. So final decision. So Councilor or Deputy Mayor Sandhu, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks for the presentation, Thomas and Mr. Smith. I don't have a question. I just have a comment, and I don't have a problem supporting the ask as is today. But I don't know if I will be open to any extensions, because the current office that's been there has been on West Park, been prior to 2010. And these temporary things can become temporary years and years and years. So I just wanted to say that right now I don't have an issue and I think it's a decent spot for that. But come 3 years, I might not share that same view. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Further comments or questions from anybody? I see none, and I'll echo the same comments as Deputy Mayor Sandu. I think for 3 years, yes, I will certainly support the temporary application, but in the future, I hope that we could find a permanent location for Mr. Orsi's facility. So I would ask him not to invest too deeply into a septic system. That's a pretty expensive undertaking, so probably not a wise thing to do, but. Okay, so further action, council will not make any decision on the matter tonight. We will receive the staff report for information. The matter will be referred back to staff for further recommendation. A report at a later date. So recommendation, report PLN 2023-30 entitled Application for Temporary Use Zoning Bylaw Amendment for Modern Homes, file D14-23-02 be received, and the comments received in writing and or made at the public meeting be received, and that the Office of Community Planning consider the matters raised and address same in its recommendation report. Move a second for this, please. Moved by Councillor Dyke, seconded by Deputy Mayor Sandu. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. All right, we're moving on to our second public meeting information, and it is 4.4, the public information meeting PLN 2023-25. Application for temporary use zoning bylaw amendment, owner Christopher Morgus, municipal address 4230 line 2, planning file D14-23-12. Planning report. The planning staff will not present the contents of the staff report. Please note that the application being presented by staff represents the applicant's development proposal. The presentation by staff will contain an update on comments received to date and does not include a recommendation on the proposal. Town staff will provide a report at a later date, which will also reflect and consider the public comments made during this public meeting and written submissions received before the report is written. So I'll now turn the meeting over to Madeline Luker, planner. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, council, members of public. Thank you for attending this evening's public meeting for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment for 4230 line 2. Next slide, please. I would like to start by providing an overview of tonight's presentation. I will discuss the purpose of the public meeting, introduce the application, discuss the public notice process, provide a detailed overview of the subject property and application, and share some concluding remarks and next steps. If you want to comment or receive notification as to when this file will be examined by council again, please send an email to mluker@townofbwg.com. Please make sure you include your full name and municipal address in your email. Next slide, please. The purpose of tonight's public meeting is to introduce the applicant's proposal to council and to the public, and to invite questions and seek input. Once an application is deemed complete, the town is obligated under the Planning Act to hold a public meeting. Staff are in the process of completing a detailed review of the application, and council will not make any decision on this application tonight. The matter will be referred back to staff to consider the results of the public meeting and to review comments received through the circulation process. Staff will then report to council with a recommendation at a later date once this comprehensive review has taken place. Next slide, please. The town has received an application for temporary use zoning bylaw amendment to permit a second dwelling, being a garden suite, on the subject property for a period of 20 years, which is the maximum allowable time under the Planning Act. The garden suite would be occupied by the property owner's son and son's spouse. Next slide, please. Regarding the public notice procedure, signage was confirmed installed on the property on July 19th by the applicant, and notice was placed in the online edition of Bradford Today on July 13th and the July 13th edition of the Bradford Topic. Additionally, a revised notice of public meeting indicating the new location of the public meeting was issued Thursday, August 3rd. Lastly, as prescribed by the Planning Act, notice of public meeting was mailed to all property owners assessed within 120 meters of the property. Next slide, please. The subject land is located east of County Road 27 and west of Canal Road, with a total site area of approximately 3.51 hectares, with frontage along line 2 of approximately 32 meters. The land is currently occupied by a single detached dwelling, garden suite, and driveway, Additionally, the northern portion of the property is composed of a wooded area. The property is primarily surrounded by agricultural uses and single attached dwellings, as well as the Solani Sweet Cheese Factory, which is located southeast of the subject property. Next slide, please. Above is official plan mapping for the area. The subject property is outlined in red. The subject lands are located outside of the Bradford urban area, as identified on Schedule B of the 2023 official plan, and are designated rural. Generally speaking, these lands are intended to protect the rural character of the town and promote long-term diversity and viability of rural economic activities. The town's 2023 official plan contains policies that permit the garden suites within the rural designation, subject to the passing of a temporary use zoning bylaw amendment in accordance with the Planning Act. Next slide, please. Above is a map showing zoning for the area. The map identifies the subject property in a red outline. The subject property is zoned agricultural and marsh agricultural. Agricultural and marsh agricultural uses are generally focused and limited to farming and accessory supportive uses that support the farming community. The town zoning bylaw defines a garden suite as a one-unit detached residential structure containing bathroom and kitchen facilities that is ancillary to an existing residential building on a lot that is designed to be portable. The town zoning bylaw states, unless otherwise permitted in this bylaw, no more than one dwelling unit shall be permitted on any lot. As such, the applicant is proposing a temporary zoning amendment to permit the second dwelling being a garden suite on the subject property. Next slide, please. Above, or the above image is the site plan for the property. The plan consists of the following. The existing 214.79 square meter garden suite for the property owner's son and son's spouse, existing primary dwelling unit, an existing driveway which provides vehicular access to the primary dwelling and garden suite, which are serviced by existing septic and well. If approved, the garden suite would be permitted for 20 years in addition to the permissions for the agricultural and marsh agricultural zone. Next slide, please. The subject application was circulated to internal departments and external agencies for review on July 7th, 2023. And the following agencies listed on the slide and departments have indicated that they have no concerns or objections to date. Next slide, please. Additionally, no public comments have been received to date. Next slide, please. I will now make some final remarks. Once an application is deemed complete, the town is obligated under the Planning Act to hold a public meeting. The purpose of this public meeting is to introduce the applicant's proposal to council and to the public and to invite questions and seek input that will inform staff and council's consideration of the application. Staff have not yet completed a detailed review of the application, and council will not make any decision on this matter tonight. At this point, the application will be referred back to staff for further review in order to consider the results of tonight's public meeting, to review comments received through the circulation process, and to evaluate the merits of this proposal. At a later date, once this comprehensive review has taken place, staff will report back to council with a recommendation. Until that point, public comments can be submitted. Next slide, please. To close, for members of the public who wish to comment or receive future notifications as to when this application will be considered by council again, please send an email to mluker@townofbwg.com. The applicant is in attendance this evening to answer any questions that council may have on the application. And at this point, I would like to invite the applicant and property owner, Christopher Morgus, to introduce himself and add any comments. Following this, the floor will be open to questions from council. Thank you for listening.
Yes, so is the representative prepared to add any additional details to the proposal?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Worship, and Council. Good evening, thank you. I'd just like to make a comment on this application. The garden suite existed when we purchased the property. We're going through the process of recertifying the application process to bring it back into good standing property is large, rural. It supported the garden suite for many years. The purpose of this suite will be used for my son, who just got married and is a married man for exactly 2 months now, and his spouse, and hopefully maybe some children in the future. So our hope is as a family to keep them close, as we are a close family. And I urge council to consider renewing this existing application as it was existing, as I said, at the point when we purchased the property. And that being said, I don't see any adverse effects given the rural area. It's a very large property. And it's been there for many, many years. In fact, I think it goes back to the original bylaw that was put in place by this council in 2003. So this is now 20 years on. When we purchased the property, it was under a 10-year renewal process, and the existing landowner, who was elderly, missed the renewal date as she lost her husband during that period and lost track of time and this and that. And so when we acquired the property a few years ago, we started the process of seeing if we could put this garden suite back into good standing. And Miss Luker was very kind in, going through the process with us. And so here we are. It's very useful given the fact that housing is very difficult for young people today, especially young married folks with, dreams of a family and children. And I think the logic behind it is I'd like to keep him close, as that's our residence and it's there. And while he can save up some funds to go forward in life, this gives him a starting point. And Bradford, West Gwillimbury, we're blessed with so much land, and a few meters I don't think could impact anybody adversely. And so I respectfully ask for your kind consideration in this matter, as it'll be solely used for family purposes, specifically my son and his spouse, and not for any other purpose other than that. Is there any questions you'd like to ask? You're on.
No, thank you. I will, I'll ask the public participation and then council will ask questions after. Actually, council wants to ask now, you can, I think. But let me go to the public first. How's that? And then council can just come in and ask their questions if you don't mind, sir. So
Absolutely.
So public participation, members of the public are now invited to address council and provide any comments and questions. Please provide your name and speak directly into the microphone. If residents have prepared a written submission that are reading from, please submit that to the clerk upon completion of your presentation. So I'll call for a public participation. If you just want to go sit down for a minute and we'll see if the public wants to come up, or if there's any public here for this. So thank you, sir. First call for public participation. Second call for public participation. And third and final call for public participation. All right. So now council, you're invited to ask some questions. So I'll turn it to Deputy Mayor Sandu, then Councilor Giordano.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have a question, just a comment. I don't have an issue supporting this. It actually aligns with council's priorities that we look at different options of housing, and this, in my mind, falls into one, especially in the times when we don't have enough options available for housing. I know this was first granted in 2002, I believe it said in the report. And this is a second extension, but I don't have an issue with it. And I think this is a good way of providing a startup home for a young family that can settle and hopefully start raising a family in Bradford, West Gwillimbury, and then have their own property at some point. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for those comments. Councilor Giordano?
So comments and a question. Comments, congratulations to your family for growing. I come from a culture that many others do as well, from various different cultures where for some reason those kids have to be close by as long as possible. And it's mutually beneficial for everybody because it does give them the opportunity to save up and you know, maybe build a bit of a savings without having to pay for rent or getting into something, you know, maybe that puts them behind as opposed to ahead. So I appreciate your what you're doing for your family. The other thing too is we're looking at garden suites all across the province. Toronto's laneways are turning into housing and you know, people with very small backyards are able to put garden suites into already very dense residential areas. So something like this with you know, acres and hectares, we can, you know, I see it definitely fitting in with the culture, what we're trying to create for housing for sure. My question is, maybe it's a two-part question. Number one, is it fully integrated into the septic system? Okay, yes. And then would there any, is there an appetite to maybe eventually convert this away from a garden suite and into a permanent structure in the future?
I mean, that changes at certain points, or if there's an opportunity to that down the road. I know Toronto, there's a bylaw that's passed that allows us to put in, but like I said, right now we're not that far out. We're thinking just to get settled as a young person and family, and as things go, we'll address it down the road, but you hit it right on the head. It's an opportunity for young people in this community, in this city, in this province that don't have options.
Mr. Marsh, can you come to the microphone, please? I'm sorry. I apologize. I should have had you come up right away. Can you bring the answers back? So question one was, are you integrated in the septic system? Can you speak in the mic when you speak?
Yes, absolutely.
You too.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Councillor. I think the issue here is we too are a close family and bring those values close to heart to keep the children around. And that's very important to us. Second, it's difficult for them to get a start in this world. And the more help that we can provide, the better. Housing is a big problem in the city. It's a crisis, actually, if that's the word we should use. And if we want to say it honestly, I think it is. I think one day with the changes the Premier Ford is making, the Planning Act will change to address these issues. I know that the planning, the bill 23, the growing 1.5 million houses by 2030 is an ambitious goal. I hope that that can be done, but that's going to take innovation and thought through councils like yours and other municipalities to address this issue, because we have to think out of the box on how we can house people. You know, immigration comes to Canada 500,000 at a time, and I'm in the housing business in the city, and I just see it getting worse every month. And it's a shame that we can't, with all this land that we have, be more innovative and deal with this in a different way. Now, that's not a fault of anybody. It's just where we are. And to answer your question, the unit is fully functional. It has septic, it has source to water. It just needs some freshening up and some work on it. But once that's approved, we can get to that part and redo it so that it's a safe and you know, livable place that they can call home. And that's my comments to that. We're a Bradford, West Gwillimbury family. I was born and raised in Woodbridge, played hockey in this arena for all my life. And I went before here to have a look at the arena just for old time's sake, because I loved playing here so much when I was quite young. So I just wanted to throw that in. But I want my kids to play here and my grandkids to play here. And that's why we moved up here to Bradford, West Gwillimbury, because we loved it. It's what Woodbridge was. And that's the part that I think you guys have really balanced well. you balanced, urban with rural, and I love it. And so you sold us. So we just need a place to put the youngster at the moment.
Well, thank you for that question, or yeah, the answer. And I hope that when this comes forward, everyone considers that. And I also hope that you have an open fridge policy in your home,
Absolutely.
because that's
Counselor.
very important for the people that live close by.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Counselor, you're welcome at any time to come by.
Joe's trying to catch a free meal. Okay, Councilor Verkuyk, please.
Yeah, I'm in support of this too. My question is maybe more for staff. This use expired, the temporary use. How do we track temporary uses over time? Do we have some kind of way of mechanism?
We offer that question up to Madeleine or Alan, who wants to answer that?
Thank you, Mayor, through you to Councilor Verkuyk. When the first temporary use was established back in 2002, that would have been under the former Township of West Gwillimbury zoning bylaw. About 8 years later, a new zoning bylaw was produced for Bradford, West Gwillimbury, and that's the first zoning bylaw for the town as amalgamated as it exists today. Through that consolidation, we introduced a tracking of temporary use permissions. And so that's how we track the expiry of those temporary uses on a go-forward basis. But this one happened to have not been included in that temporary use tracking at that time. Anecdotally, if I may add on the timing piece, when this garden suite was initially established, the Planning Act only allowed for a 10-year initial use permission for garden suites. And so it would have expired in 2012. A year prior to the expiry, the province actually modified the Planning Act to allow for a 20-year garden suite permission. And that's the framework that we understand Mr. Morgus, my apologies, would be seeking permission for the 20-year permission with the opportunity for 3-year extensions thereafter. I hope that answers your question, Councillor.
One follow. So are there any other expired uses out there, temporary uses that we may not know of or need to investigate? Not that we're going to help police everybody, but just so we don't have this happening.
Certainly through Mayor Leduc to Councillor Verkuyk. We have been tracking them since our 2010 zoning bylaw and would be monitoring them on a go-forward basis thereafter. For temporary uses which may have been achieved prior to the 2010 bylaw, that is possible, that temporary uses may have been permitted prior to and may not have then been consolidated in that 2010 bylaw.
That's your question, Councilor Verkuyk?
Well, I guess it's just, is there any mechanism to find out about those missing ones?
To your Mayor Leduc. Technically, yes, that would involve sifting back through old records, ideally some digital, likely paper, and searching through amendments to the prior zoning bylaws for the former town of Bradford, former township of West Gwillimbury, and former town of Tecumseth, in search of possible temporary use permission. So there would be a process available to us to do that, yes.
Lots of work to find out, I guess. So, okay, Councillor Dickey?
Just a comment, not a question. Well, I actually have a question as well, but I encourage this forward. It doesn't affect any neighbors. The property is large enough. It fits well, and I like the fact that that you have this opportunity for your family to have a garden shed. But going back in time, if I remember, back in 2000 and 2002, in the years when people came before council, when it came to garden sheds, I recall a $10,000 deposit or $5,000 deposit. What happens? What happens to all that on all these files that we have in Bradford? So there must be records on this money goes back 10, 20 years. Just curious.
Back to you, Alan. He's talking about some funds that were paid based on the temporary zoning bylaw.
Certainly, thank you through Mayor Leduc to Councillor Dyke. We would be looking to report back to council on that at the same time as the recommendation on Mr. Morges's application. And if there is a need for update modification to a new temporary use agreement, then we would be looking to bring that forward and seek council's direction on that at the same time. Not through first-hand experience in Bradford, West Gwillimbury myself, but in other jurisdictions, I'm familiar with deposits of the nature that you're referring to. And if there are indeed funds that the town has been holding under the original agreement, then we would be taking that into consideration as part of a new agreement for this current application.
Yeah, for some reason, I recall this because I know when you look back to these garden suites, we, you know, I always look back in time and I always felt at that particular time back in 2002, what was required was at that time, a lot of money at that time, 15,000, 10,000. And I seen that some, you know, for some people it's caused a hardship. So I just I was curious to see where, you know, what happens with that. It have to be in our treasury and however the lawyers work out when you purchase a property, but so just curious to see where those records are and how that comes forward. And overall, I support the project. So thank you.
Good. Yeah, obviously there's some out there that we probably missed because of the amalgamation of the bylaws and everything else. So it's a lot of digging to go find them. Councilor Harper.
Thank you, Mayor. It's just a comment. To you, sir, thank you for your application. Thank you for your presentation as well, Madeline. I appreciate that. My comment to you is well done. I mean, devotion to family is very important and it's very prominent here, especially in the hard times with the rise of costs, you know, inflation, housing costs, gas, carbon taxes, the taxes, everything. So, I mean, it's well received here. So thank you very much and very much appreciate to see that devotion to family.
Thank you, Councillor. I really appreciate that comment. Like I said earlier, it's really important to us as a family unit to stay together. I think that's a good cohesive community thing. When families are strong, they build strong communities around them. And you're right, Mr. Mayor, Your Honor, they will become a permanent resident of Bradford one day because that's where our family unit will be. You know, we all attend the local church and we're involved in the community and like it's all part of us, of who we are. So we're trying to build our life here in going into the future. And you'll have one or two more customers in the next 2 generations, the way I see it, into the community. So, and good ones because they would have been raised under the auspices of a family, you know, unit that's strong and based on family values, which is what we are.
Yes, thank you. And trust me, I totally agree with you. I want to do the same thing for my family in my yard. I want to put a second suite for actually for myself, so I can move the kids in the house. But I mean, I think it's a good thing. I think it's a great thing to keep family together. It's very important. And I certainly appreciate your grandchildren. If there's grandchildren later on in the future, they will have memories of the Leisure Center and Bob Falls Arena like you had memories here. So hopefully in the end that everything is successful and we look forward to
I'd be happy to help you with the application, Mr. Mayor. Okay.
Well, I'll tell you, if I need you, I'll certainly call you on that one. How's that? Right now, maybe I'm moving them out.
Okay.
No, yes, I totally agree. And if I do need that information, I will grab it from you, sir.
Be my
Thank you.
pleasure, sir.
Okay, so I have further action. Council will make no decision on this matter tonight, but will receive the staff report for information. The matter will be referred back to staff for further recommendation report at a later date. So the recommendation is that report entitled 4230 line 2, file number D14-23-12, application for temporary use zoning bylaw amendment for garden suite be received for information, and that the comments received in writing and or made at the public meeting be received, and that the Office of Community Planning consider the matters raised and addressed same in its recommendation report. Move a second for this, please. Moved by Councillor Giordano, second by Councillor Dehaney. All in favor? Carried, thank you. So we're on to 4.5, follow-up, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Follow-up, it's recommended that all comments or questions on planning applications be submitted in writing to planninginfo@townofbwg.com. Written submissions are not required at the public meeting, but can be made at a later date and will be accepted up to the date that council makes a decision on the matter. Written submissions on planning matters will be read at the council meeting, but will be forwarded to planning staff for consideration and or response. Council will be apprised of all public comments received prior to making a decision on the application. If you wish to receive information on a specific planning application or to be notified of the upcoming meeting related to the planning matter, please email planninginfo@townofbwg.com, or like the two applications said, email the planners direct. We are on to 4.6, adjourned public meeting. Recommendation, the public meeting is hereby adjourned at 7:46. Moved by Councillor Faragini, seconded by, who did I not get yet? Councillor Kike, okay. I don't think I got you, so all in favor? Carried, and confirm proceedings. Recommendation that the bylaw 2023-58, a bylaw to confirm proceedings of the council meeting dated August 8, 2023 be enacted. Moved by Councillor Dykey, seconded by Deputy Mayor Sandu. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Number 6, adjournment. Recommendation that the meeting is hereby adjourned at 7:46. Moved by Councillor Harper, seconded by Councillor Faragini. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Good night. Thank you everyone for attending. Appreciate that.